All right, welcome back. Sorry for these technical difficulties, but in COVID times, I think we're all kind of getting used to that. So let me just start back from the very beginning. Welcome to our kickoff event of the 2020 CleanTech Challenge organized by AFT. All right, so what do we have in store today? Well, we're going to start with a small introduction, who we are, what we're doing, and also why you should definitely join us in the upcoming year. After this, two exciting companies will come tell their story about how they're active in the clean tech industry. Now, following that, we're going to invite last year's winner to also come and talk about their experience as a participant. Round it all off, we're going to have a small online Q&A with our two businesses where you can ask any clean tech related questions that you might have or might want to know. So it's always a good idea to kind of, again, sit back and think about the why are we doing this? Why clean tech? And it boils down to the fact that very often nowadays technology isn't really purely solving the issues of people anymore. It seems that too often we enter situations where we're trying to design people to work with systems instead of designing systems that work for people. This is where clean technology comes in. We start again from the issue, from the challenges facing us today, specifically when we're talking about the climate crisis, trying to solve them using technology. So practically, what are we going to be doing? Well, CleanTech Belgium is part of a global innovation and business plan competition organized by the London Business School, College of London. It's been going on since 2009. What we do is we gather a group of students and we guide them in a journey of building their own clean tech business all the way from the idea phase to the startup phase with professional guidance and workshops. Now, the winner of the Belgian competition gets to go to London and participate for a £10,000 prize over there. So today, what is the timeline for the upcoming semester? Well, today, 28th of October, we have our kickoff event where we try to get you excited for everything that we're going to be doing in the upcoming year. Now, after today, we're also going to be posting a link for future participants where you can just sign up for our upcoming workshop. Note, don't need to have an idea just yet, don't need to have a team just yet, just need to have interest in the topic. Now, if you do already have an idea, that's also great. Definitely invite your friends, definitely form your own team, and we hope to see you in our first workshop, which will be on the 2nd November. That's going to be a workshop on ideation, specifically how startups gather their first idea, how to build their first business plan. After this workshop, we're going to have another one. We're going to be zooming in a bit on these clean tech challenges. What issues do we have today? How could we solve them? After this workshop, you will likely have your own, as well as a rough idea. Then to round off the final workshop about sustainability, how to turn all these wonderful ideas and visions actual practical consequences. After that, you can have the opportunity to also pitch your business idea in our first feedback session in front of a tech jury. So our second semester is going to be quite similar. We'll have 3 more workshops: financial planning, funding, and pitching. Well, our Belgian finals in March. Now, the winner of this competition goes on in April to the London finals. Now, do note, right? Belgian finals will definitely have other prizes for that do not win. You can also win, for example, the best pitch. So it's definitely worth sticking around for the entire track. Now, our team. So standing next to me over here, we've got Thomas, wearing a different shirt than me. Also behind the scenes, we have Michiel and Valerie. For two distinct, also kind of unique, that our entire competition is organized by two student organizations, which might not previously work together. So let's introduce the first one, AFD, Academics for Development. So what is AFD? Well, Academics for Development strives to give all students the opportunity to have a durable social impact while enriching themselves and others through a hands-on, multidisciplinary, and cross-cultural entrepreneurial experience. That's a whole lot of words. Let's just shorten it down. Social impact through social entrepreneurship. Now, what is social entrepreneurship? In practice, there's three main sort of businesses that we can find. First of all, we have the classic nonprofits like WWF. They gather donations and then they try to fulfill a social vision. Then you have for-profit companies like Coca-Cola, who have dedicated input streams that they then use to generate profit for example, shareholders. Now, social entrepreneurship tries to sit in the middle of these two things. They have their own dedicated input streams, no donations, but instead of using this profit to pay out large sums to shareholders, they reinvest it into their company to fulfill their social vision or social mission. Now, a good example of this is Too Good To Go, or yours truly, AFD. Alright, so we've got 4 pillars at AFD. We have our events, like yesterday, where we had our first Green Wave event. Then we also have our workshop tracks, which include the CleanTech Challenge, which is why you're watching today, I assume. And finally, we also have our projects in the South. Unfortunately, applications for both Bright Minds and projects have already closed, but that's fine, because you can still join the CleanTech Challenge. Now, I'm gonna let my colleague here speak now, and explain to you guys exactly what Academics for Technology is all about.
Yeah, so thank you, Matthijs, for these kind words. So next to AFD, we as well at AFD believe in the future of CleanTech. At AFD, we are a student organization by students for students. Thank you. Where we work in the principle of innovate, challenge, and excite. Basically, in practice, we organize events as well as trips, as well as workshops. So first of all, the events, these are oftentimes single evening panel discussions where we invite speakers to come cover a certain topic. We have our Women in Tech event. Some of you may know it, some of you may have followed it last week. The CleanTech Challenge is a bit different. It is an event, but we operate on a workshop basis. So workshops is normally one evening, you go somewhere and you learn something about a different topic. The CleanTech Challenge is an assembly of certain workshops where you get to learn a lot about startups concerning clean energy. Clean tech, not clean energy, that's just one small part of it. We also have our trips. Normally we organize 2 trips a year. We have our career starter trip at the beginning of the year. This year it was unfortunately cancelled. I think I don't have to tell you why. We do have a student startup trip coming up. This year we're going to Belgium to visit all different kinds of interesting startups. Applications for this trip start around December. Now, we wouldn't be here today just with AFD and AFD. We need sponsors. For this, I'm proud to introduce that some of these sponsors, one of them being Vlerik Business School. Vlerik is a business school, I think well known among students. At Vlerik, you can follow some tracks like a master's degree or go even further. Vlerik has a lot of potential, which is why we approached them to cover a part of the CleanTech Challenge. Like at Vlerik, you have three startups that reach the status of a unicorn. A unicorn startup is a privately owned startup valued at over $1 billion US. You have Colibra, Argen-X, and Team Blue, all being founded by people who had something to do with Vlerik at one point in their life. Alongside Vlerik, we also have McKinsey & Company. McKinsey & Company is a well-known consultancy firm. The basis of consultants is that a private party or a company can approach someone like McKinsey with a problem, a certain problem they would like to have solved. And this way, McKinsey solves the problem for you. Now, one part of McKinsey company that really excited us is that they have a certain department concerning sustainability. With sustainability, they would like to lower the energy and CO2 needed to do certain things. And this is also why we approached them. They've both been partners for multiple years, and we're really happy. Alongside Vlerik and McKinsey, we also have two other sponsors. We have Bolt and Umicore, both of which will be present today. Now I'd really like to introduce our speaker from Bolt, Rens van Houten. He's the co-founder of Bolt. We'll start with a brief video regarding Bolt, so yeah, have fun.
Test 1 en 2.
Duurzame energie door en voor burgers. Punt. Dan niet zo rap, jong?
Ja, we zien ons eigenlijk als energieboer. Wij kweken de groene stroom.
We hebben zon nodig, we hebben zonnepaneel nodig en dan produceren we groene energie.
Groen is gewoon super plezant.
Hoe weer voor de zonnepanelen, hè, man?
Zeker.
Ah ja.
Iemand anders zijn afval zijn onze grondstoffen.
De toekomst zal groen zijn of zal niet zijn.
We willen heel België aan de groene energie.
Heel groen. Groen. 100%. Ja, fluogroen.
En voorop lopen, een koploper zijn. Niet onder mijn rok zien, hè?
Waarom kopen bij een ander als het naast de deur kan?
Hoe zouden jullie energie uitbeelden?
Koop echte energie van echte mensen. Leer al onze opwekkers kennen en stap over via boltenergie.be. Bolt, tegen de stroming.
Hi everyone, as presented before, I'm Rens van Houten, co-founder of Bolt. Normally Petrian would be here this evening, but he just became father, so I happily fall in for him. Petrian and I actually started 2 years ago with this project, with this venture, and now Bolt and the energy platform is now live for 1 year and 2 months. And we have now 7,500 delivery points on our platform. So we're still in the startup phase, obviously, but we're starting to grow and hopefully going to scale up in next year. What is Bolt about? Bolt is actually an energy supplier, but we rather refer to it as an energy platform where consumers and producers can find each other. I'll go into that into detail a bit later on, but let's just first start with the mission of Bolt and why we actually founded Bolt. That is all about the green energy transition. Bolt really wants to stimulate the green energy transition in Belgium, and of course, why? And we all know that because of the climate, of course. And the most effective way to reduce your CO2 footprint is having one child less. Yeah, fun. Who is going to do that? Living without a car is a second option. In Flanders, kind of hard to do. Then avoiding flights and so on is also a thing that people don't like to do. But then on the fourth place we see, and those are figures from a report in 2017, but the overall consensus is still valid, is buying green energy. And so this is a very easy thing to do. It's just a choice you make. You choose for a green energy product. You don't have to reduce your comfort and so on. So it's a very effective way. Okay, so we would actually think that this is done a lot in Flanders and Belgium already. So we would actually expect that a lot of people already have a green energy contract back home, and that is true. So if you look, 40% in Flanders of the households already have a green electricity contract back home. Honestly, in my opinion, I think 40% is not that much yet. I think it could be way better. But there is a big but here. Only 1 out of 10 contracts in Flanders are actually really green, meaning they are having electricity produced locally in Flanders. If you look into Belgium, to put it a bit in perspective, on a Belgian level, 13% of the energy produced in 2019 was green in Belgium, and those are figures from Elia, the high tension grid operator. Okay, so what's going on here? So 40% of the contracts are green, only 10% is created or produced in Flanders. Well, this is all about guarantees of origin, certificates that suppliers can buy from producers. It has been in the press a lot already before, so I probably don't have to explain you too much about this, but you can buy guarantees of origin of producers. Those producers can actually sell those guarantees of origin for every megawatt hour they produce and put on the grid. A supplier can buy that. And with this guarantees of origin, you can make your contract green. This is done all over whole Europe. And that's where it gets a bit tricky. So again, back to the thing, okay, 40% of the contracts are green. Well, a lot of those contracts are actually green with guarantees of origin from Iceland, Norway, Sweden, Denmark. What is the problem there? And if you take the case of Iceland, of course, green energy produced in Iceland, there is no cable between Belgium and Iceland. So how can you sell green energy from Iceland and Belgium? Yeah, that's a bit weird, right? So even if we bring this to the Swedish level or Norwegian level, people there, they will not actively go for a green contract. Why? They know that their green energy is 100% green already, or practically 100% green. So they have the perception of having green energy. People in Belgium also have a green contract. They have the perception to have green energy. So the same green energy is perceived twice as green. So that's a problem. So the demand and green energy is actually lowered by this thing. So what can we do? So how can we offer people real Belgian green energy in an effective way? And that's a bit the idea of Bolt, is to actually link consumers and producers, to give the chance to consumers to choose themselves from where the energy is sourced from. And that's the big idea for Bolt, and that's how we see how we can push the energy transition in Belgium as well. It's just a very, very easy thing to do. So how does it work? Well, on a yearly basis, people that come with Bolt, they can buy a green energy contract, and the same amount that you consume on a yearly basis, we actually will buy from the producer that you have chosen, and we will allocate that to you. So we will allocate, we take the certificates of origin. For your contract, we also use injection, and we put it on the grid in the same amount that you consume, and it's really allocated to you, so nobody else can claim it. What is the idea? If everybody can choose themselves where the energy is coming from, and they know what producer they do support, the demand can increase. And those are pure economics, I would say. Demand can increase. The return on the investment of production, green production, is going up. So we can actually stimulate the green energy transition. So that's what it's all about. First of all, having a transparency in place to know what people actually buy. Know what it is about. So what is Bolt exactly? Bolt exactly is a bit like, let's say, a Luminous and an Eco, an Engie. You go to the website, you buy an electricity contract, and like you would do another website, like another supplier, but in Bolt we will oblige you to also choose a producer. So you can choose a producer that you would like, and you will see and on our website you can pinpoint a lot of local producers where you can choose from, and then we will allocate that energy to you. So you really know who you are supporting and to which producer your money is going to which initiative, and that you really know that you have put for your consumption green energy in the market and not just a guarantee of origin. That is what Bolt is all about. Okay. So we talked a bit about the concept of Bolt. Myself, I'm responsible for the operations at Bolt. Pieter Jan, my co-founder, is responsible for marketing and sales. So I think I'm in the right place here. Talking about Bolt, how does it work? Bolt is like for 80-90% in the back end. Bolt is an energy supplier, and like an Eco, like a Luminous. So we have a billing engine, we have an accounting system. We have a market connector and so on. But that But that last 10%, actually on the back end, we add a layer on top, and that's where it comes in handy to link is a matching algorithm. In this point of time, it's rather a simple matching algorithm because it's one-on-one, right? So one consumer matches with one producer, but this already gives the transparency to have an impact on the market, to really give the people the information they need to make a conscious decision. So that's actually what Bolt is doing, and I will go on to that a bit later. With the smart meters, we can actually go a bit longer, a bit further. We can have a bit more complicated algorithms to link all real time and so on. So that's really about Bolt itself. So it's not the most complex thing, but with a little bit of technology or algorithms, you can already give a lot of value and really start that movement in Belgium. Secondly, I wanted to talk also about a project we have done this summer. So Bolt actually, I think everybody knows Studio Brussels, right? So it's a radio station here in Belgium. They had a radio show which is called Camping Belgica. Camping Belgica was a show in the evening, I think for 60 days in summer, and they presented it in a forest next to Lokeren. And we wanted to make sure that they can present fully green. What does that mean? They were in the forest, they didn't have any plug, so they didn't have electricity, so they were off the grid. So we proposed to Studio Brussels to actually put 72 solar panels next to their site and a big battery. And the idea was to have them off-grid, fully green, broadcasting their show. Why is this relevant? You would say, okay, yeah, fun. If you would look to festivals, they work on the same way. What would Studio Brussels have done normally? They would have put a big generator with diesel, and those emit quite a lot, and kind of dirty machines. And you see it as well in a lot of festivals that actually they're using that. So this was actually for us as a startup a good use case to show that it can be different. Even for festivals, it's possible to be green. Of course, it's not the right time to pitch those things to those people nowadays. It's a bit sad, but we'll try again next year. But we managed to make the Studio Brussels broadcast fully green by 72 solar panels, and a big battery. So we're talking about 3 megawatt hours produced over summer, 60 days long. That's a bit the thing that we did. I want to close this pitch with the future vision. I will not go too long on this one. In short, actually, the Bolt is operating in the energy market. This is a very, very interesting market to be in right now. There are so many things moving. It's crazy. We don't know where to start. We're a matchmaker, first of all, and so what is important for us is the rollout of the smart meters. The smart meters will give a lot of data, meaning at any point in time you will be able to say what you have consumed at your home, and we could potentially link it to the producer. So we could go end to end and match your green energy consumption production potentially, if there's a business case in that, to the consumer. So those are very interesting things, and that could complexify a bit our algorithms though, change our business model, but those are things that we have to take. Those are a lot of opportunities that we can actually take, for example. Another thing are our energy communities. It's an European directive pushed from Europe that to stimulate green energy production and sharing within communities. The Flemish government is now, as we speak, working out this regulation. Of course, this is the core business of Bolt, so we will be part of that as well. CPPA is on the slide. I will not go into that a bit more. I would like to finish actually that myself and also Bolt, we're very enthusiastic to see the evolutions on technology aspect and innovations on also, we're a matchmaker, but also in green energy production. I'm talking about solar panel improvements, but also tidal waves and tidal energy, energy from waves and at sea, hydrogen batteries. There are a lot of things to come, a lot of things that could actually boost our business model as well. If we could put that on our platform, that would be great, and also helping the energy transition in Belgium. So it's an exciting time to live in. So a bit in short, that's how we actually see the future. There's a lot of things to do, and I hope you're actually a bit enthusiastic about the Bolt concept as well. Voilà.
Thank you, Rens, for sharing this information. We would like to announce our second speaker, Wouter Guillot. He's well known, and he's known for the global leader of the sustainable value chain at Umicore. He's leading there a sustainable team at Umicore, based in Brussels. Sustainability is the core value of Umicore in doing business, and Wouter Guillot will show you this by some examples. Umicore knows that the sustainability is a future of doing business, and that it's a main advantage to have as a company. Welcome to Wouter Guillot.
Thank you for the introduction, and thank you to the organizers for giving me the opportunity to share some of my experience, and especially also of the company I work for, Umicore. And what I'll try to do is to take you through some history that we experienced as a company, transforming ourselves, and how we embedded sustainability into that. And ultimately, the objective is to take you on a sustainability path, and if you're willing to, and if you're maybe the lucky one that can join the workshop on 24th of November, we'll have more time to spend on what sustainability means and how you can integrate it in your business model. So indeed, I'm heading the sustainability team at Umicore. Once upon a time, I was a student in Leuven. That's back in the 90s, so I'm a little more senior than most of the students around here. But this is a very energizing environment, and it's a real pleasure to be here. I'll just try to make this work. Yes, okay. So let's maybe take you a bit through, not too much history, but what do we stand for as a multinational company? We're indeed a multinational headquartered in Brussels, in Belgium. And some of the older people may know us as Union Minière. We changed name into Umicore in 2000, and that's the year I joined the company, actually. And at that time, when I left my previous employer and told him I was going to work for Umicore, they couldn't believe their eyes, because they thought this was a real old industrial lady. But what I found at Umicore was a company that was really on the verge of changing the way they do business, changing the business itself, and that's a bit what I want to share with you. So what is a business model? It's closed loop. So it means we transform metals into materials, which are often intermediates for our customers to integrate them in electronic products, or into cars, or into catalysts for the petrochemical industry. And where we can, we close the loop. It's all based on our science in terms of chemistry, metallurgy, material science. But so it's about transforming metals into materials which are solutions for our customers, and where we can close the loop by recycling end of life. But the way we structured our business is based on sustainability principles. And what we did is we actually, when we transformed the business in the late 90s, because we were a company that was basically focusing on making metals. The more volumes, the better. But we wanted to step out of that because we were also owner of some mines, and mines were not the future for the company because we were much too small to invest, to make it grow and to make it profitable in the end. So the company decided to step out of the mining, but you need to do something else. So we decided we will add value. We will actually use the knowledge we have to transform these metals, which we buy on the market, into solutions for our customers. But what kind of solutions? What is the business that we thought we can make a difference and use our competences? And this is actually based on a very in-depth analysis of what are the megatrends in society and how does our competence fit to that. And the three megatrends, and luckily 20 years later they're still very relevant, is resource scarcity. So the world has big reserves of a lot of minerals and metals, but it's not endless. And I'll give some examples of that later on. So resource scarcity, we contribute by recycling products which are end of life. Think about your mobile phone. Think about the car batteries, future. They're now put on the market to drive, but when they are end of life, the battery comes available for recycling. Think about catalysts that are in cars. They also get end of life, they can be recycled. So resource scarcity, we address that by recycling, supplying materials by closing the loop. The next thing is the electrification of the automotive. The real mobile electricity change came with smartphones, for instance. So we all have laptops, we have smartphones, they all contain lithium-ion batteries, but the big growth today is, of course, in the automotive, because while in your mobile phone you have a battery of 10 grams, in a full electrical car, the battery is 100 or 200 kilograms. So it's about a factor 1,000 more of materials you need to make the car run. So we make battery materials based on metals. So that's where we tune into the electrification of the mobility. And ultimately it's done for clean air, because it's of course done for carbon dioxide reduction as well. Transport is an important contributor, but it's also done for clean air. People want clean air in the city. You can do this by electrification. And then the third leg is the stringent emission control. That's also related to clean air. So we provide also catalysts for the combustion engines. So for the classical, I would say the conventional cars, they have catalysts inside that reduce the NOx, the CO, and the hydrocarbons. So that in a nutshell, let's say the three big pillars of what our business is structured on. And we're an industrial leader in sustainability, but I'll give you some more on that in a minute. So I told you about these three megatrends, which you find on the top right there. And how do our products align? Well, as I told you, clean air is provided by integrating automotive catalysts. So catalysts for purifying the exhausts of cars, vans, buses, trucks. Electrification of transport is addressed by supplying battery materials. We make the materials, the powders that go into the batteries. So Umicore is not a manufacturer of batteries, but we supply the metal-containing powders that go into these batteries. And then third, the recycling. You may know our plant in Hoboken near Antwerp, which is the largest manufacturing plant of Umicore worldwide. And it's a unique and a global leader in terms of recycling of metals. This tunes also, and here comes part of the Sustainability Connect, but more in terms of communication, I would say, we connect this to the UN Sustainable Development Goals. About 5 years ago, the United Nations defined 17 goals for the world, sustainability development goals. So let's say the big things that need to happen with in total 168 objectives behind. And that is what many companies and organizations started to measure themselves against. So in terms of communication, you will often find in the reports of companies the link to these sustainability development goals, because that's a way to say, like, this is our contribution to society. As I told you, we're a global company. We have 50 production sites worldwide, about 11,000 people, and we're basically half of our business and people is in Europe. We've got a very large manufacturing base in Asia, in China, but also Korea, Japan, and other Asian countries. We have a plant in South Africa, and then in the North and South Americas. So as you may guess already, because I talked about catalysts, especially automotive catalysts, I talked about battery materials, for instance, for the electrification of the automotive. A lot of our materials go to automobile applications. And basically we are technology agnostic. What does that mean? It doesn't really matter to Umicore what the technology is that is chosen, because the technology chosen will be influenced by what government wants, by the regulations they put in place. Think about the clean air. There are Euro norms in Europe. There are cities where you cannot enter anymore with all diesel cars because they're simply prohibited. They don't have the Euro norm 4 or 5, whatever is requested. But basically for Umicore doesn't care, because doesn't care in that sense that we provide automotive catalysts if there's a need for combustion engines. We provide battery materials if there's a need for batteries. We provide catalysts that go into fuel cells, which is also an issue that will find its place in terms of the mobility. So whether it's combustion engines that need catalysts for clean air, whether it's electrical cars, hybrid or full, that need batteries, and whether it's fuel cell driven cars, Umicore can supply the materials, and end of life we can recycle and close the loop. There's about 20 metals, in fact it's 29 in total, that we have in the company that we transform in different kind of materials, and we can recycle. And we also work with programs. We've got a 5-year program which is ending this year. It's Horizon 2020, where we set ourselves the goal in 2015 that we want to become a global leader in clean mobility materials and recycling. And we want to have turned sustainability into a competitive edge. Now, this is important because turning sustainability into a competitive edge, you may immediately think like, is it about customers paying €1 more to Umicore because you do the right thing? Well, I can tell you, it's not that easy to make customers pay more for a material that they can also get from others at other price levels in the market. Sustainability as a competitive edge is really about, for instance, developing partnerships. It is about the way you do things. It is about the due diligence and the sourcing of your raw materials. You don't want child labor in the materials you source. You don't want bribery, corruption, money laundering. But it's also about the way you produce. What are your ambitions? What is your contribution to society to reduce the emissions of metals to air, to water? How effective, how efficient are you in the transformation of these materials? All of this contributes to sustainability, and all of this contributes also to customers, especially in the automotive, that want to work with a company like Umicore and form partnerships, because we believe we do the right thing, we communicate about it, we measure ourselves against certain standards, and so we demonstrate the way we do this. But let me make it a bit more tangible, because sustainability is such not a buzzword, but it covers so much, and I will tell you what it covers for Umicore. So I gave already a flavor, but for Umicore it means three things. Sustainability, first of all, applies to the way we source raw materials. So in the upstream, we buy a lot of metal-containing materials on the market. For some of these metals, we are the largest transformer globally. I think about cobalt, for instance, that goes into the battery materials and into the lithium-ion battery. We are one of the world's largest buyers of cobalt-containing materials on the market, and we transform that into solutions that go to the battery manufacturers. Same for precious metals. We buy a lot of precious metals-containing materials. We have electronic waste in our feed. We have spent automotive catalysts. But where do these materials come from? And there's three things that are very important in terms of the, let's say, assessment of the sustainability of the raw materials you buy. It is know your transaction, know your customer, and know your material. So know your material is know where it comes from. You do that by due diligence. Know your transaction is chain of custody. It means documentation, transactions. Where does the money go to? And of course, know your supplier is the company you work with that wants to establish a relationship. What kind of company is that? What are their goals, ambitions, and how do they work? Second application of how we look at sustainability is the products and services, the products we put in the market and the services we give to our customers in terms of recycling. And we see recycling as a service to our customers. Often Umicore is not the owner of the material. It is our customer that gives the material to Umicore. We recycle and extract the valuable metals out of it, and we give the metals back to our customer. And we're paid for that. We're paid for the service of extracting precious metals, valuable metals out of very complex materials. And that's what makes us unique, and that is part of the business model. Often, of course, we buy materials ourselves on the market and we extract the valuable metals. But where is the sustainability there? Well, think about carbon, think about footprint, footprint of the products that we give. We work a lot with automotive. You know the pressure on the transport to reduce carbon. We are a contributor to that. If you know that 50% of the carbon dioxide that is embedded in an electrical car, 50% comes from the battery, and half of that comes from the materials that Umicore provides to the battery makers. So basically 20 to 25% of the carbon dioxide that is embedded in an electrical car comes from the materials that Umicore provides. You can see the pressure that we experience also to produce low carbon and in the end carbon zero materials that we provide to the automotive. And then third leg is the operational. I talk to you about manufacturing, about 50 production sites. So there's many elements at play there. Of course, there's the health, there is the safety, there is the well-being of the employees, but there is also the eco-efficiency. I refer to metals released to air and water, where you want to minimize that. You want to minimize your energy consumption, again, for decarbonization. So all this plays in the field of the eco-efficiency. So if I summarize sustainability for Umicore, it's really three things. It is the purchase of raw materials. How do we do that? It is the products we put on the market and the services we give to the customers. How do we do that? What is important there? And it is the transformation, the operational part. So just to give you a little more detail, and make you think as well. So if we later on, in a month from here, have a workshop on sustainability, I'll address this through a model that we apply, considering the different elements that are important for you to consider when you develop your business model. But I'll give you some examples here again of Umicore. So I told you about the purchase of raw materials. Well, as I said, we buy a lot of materials on the market, very valuable metals, precious metals. There is a lot of certifications that exist on the market. So companies that audit you against a certain standard. And for precious metals, this is the LBMA certification, which is globally known. For cobalt, we actually developed our own sustainable procurement framework, which we published on our website. We are audited as Umicore against this standard ourselves. For the platinum group metals, platinum and palladium, they go into the car catalysts. There are other standards that apply. So Umicore requires from their suppliers that they are audited, but Umicore is also audited themselves, of course, in terms of how do we assure these transactions and how do we assure that these sustainability elements are properly addressed. Another thing we do is we measure, as I said. We measure, for instance, in terms of the materials we purchase, how much comes from primary sources, that means basically mines, how much comes from end-of-life products, which is recycling. A product gets recycled when it has no useful function anymore, when it is being collected. That can be done in so many ways, but at the end of the pipe, it comes to a company like Umicore to be recycled. So we measure how much of our materials come from the one and from the other source. In terms of the operations, I just give you in a nutshell, a few examples of what we measure. We measure, of course, our energy consumption, our metals released to water and air, and we want continuous improvement. So we set ourselves targets, of course. We report on that in our annual report. You can see here the reductions that were achieved by last year compared to 2015. So there is continuous progress in terms of reducing the doing more with less, I would say. So less energy, less materials we need, but basically get more out of it. Carbon dioxide, I can't avoid it, of course. It is key to what we do because our customers expect that, but it's not only customers, and that's why that's the only slide here I have on carbon dioxide. I could easily fill 2 hours on carbon dioxide, but the real important thing is that there are so many drivers that make a company like Umicore think and work on carbon dioxide. There is not only the expectations from society in terms of decarbonization, our own employees, the people that come and work with Umicore. If you ask to any new employee in Umicore why they've chosen for Umicore actually to solicit for a vacancy and then be recruited, I bet that one of the 3 reasons will always be sustainability because of the way we do things. We stand for that, we communicate on that, we live it, and also it raises expectations. So employees of Umicore also expect what's Umicore's plan to decarbonize, to get carbon neutral. And I can tell you our objective is not to get carbon neutral by 2050, which is kind of saying it's not for me because I'll be retired by then, but we'll announce next year our ambitions in terms of carbon dioxide strategy, and it will be with a timeline that is earlier than 2050. Shareholders and investors, if you're a company, if you're stock listed on the stock exchange, you have shareholders, you have people who invest in you, you have analysts that scrutinize your report, that ask you questions. There's clear expectations, more than ever before, of the people that invest in a company like Umicore, that we do the right thing, that we also do our contribution in terms of decarbonization. Obviously, there's the customers, and then there is authorities. As I told you, regulation, governments that shape regulation really have a driving force. They make the automotive decarbonize. If you just leave it to the industry itself, it could take a while before it happens. So it is really key that regulations are shaped to provide clean air to citizens and to decarbonize society at large, I would say. And then last but not least, the products we put on the market. Just an example of germanium to talk about something else than batteries and catalysts. Germanium goes into the fibers that are used for internet connections, for instance. All the communications we do go through fibers, and they contain germanium. It facilitates the transport of light through these fiber cables. But you can source germanium from different ways. As you see left on the slide, you can source germanium from coal-based materials. This literally means, and that's what happens in China, it is burning coal to extract the little amounts of germanium that are in it. But you can also extract germanium from zinc residues, or you can recycle germanium from products that come end of life, from cables that come end of life, and that become available for recycling. And Umicore's business model, as I said, is closing the loop, recycling. So what we advertise to our customers, but with data in hand, is the footprint of germanium from recycled content is 20 times lower than the footprint of germanium that comes from the coal-based in China. So we offer to the customer the choice, and obviously the ambition is to have much more of our germanium that we supply to customers coming from recycled sources instead of the primary resources coal. The other example I give you on terms of the services, then the recycling services, is the lithium-ion batteries. As I told you, it starts with smartphones, it starts with laptops, end-of-life batteries, and the future is, of course, recycling of batteries from cars. Now I can tell you, it's a hot story. There's every day there's so many press releases on automotive, on electrification, but batteries are put on the market today with the cars to drive. They're not put on the market for recycling. So the reality of battery recycling from automotive is that today the volumes that are available for recycling are limited. Luckily so, because the cars are driving. It also means that it may take 5-10 years or more down the road before really you have the large volumes available that justify very expensive investments in industrial installations to recycle. It does not mean that we cannot recycle today. We can. We have a pilot plant ourselves in our factory in Hoboken. We call it a pilot plant. It can actually take 10 or 15,000 batteries a year from electrical cars, which is already sizable, but still in terms of an industrial operation, that's not really a full-scale industrial installation. So this is to come, and this is what companies like Umicore work on. The technology is there. It needs some validation for upscaling, but the technology to recycle is there. What needs to happen is that the volumes become available to make the investment in an industrial installation and to recycle. The real investments today are, of course, in the manufacturing of the materials that go into batteries. Umicore is a manufacturer, as I said, of the powders that go into batteries. And so, for instance, in Poland, we are building a large European manufacturing base for battery materials. We have a lot of factories in China and Korea that all feed the battery pipeline. So the recycling is to come when we close the loop with the end of life. Now, just to close and make you think a little, I gave already a tip of the flavor, but of this. But I talked about mobile phones. You may know or you may not know, but this number is a little outdated, maybe from 2017, but it will more or less still be the same. 2 billion mobile phones sold per year worldwide. 150 million tablets. That's an equivalent of 48 tons of gold or 500 tons of silver. 20,000 tons of copper or 20,000 tons of cobalt. This is the size of a mine, a well-sized, good, large mine. On a yearly basis, that ends up in mobile phones. Now, these mobile phones can be recycled. Unfortunately, they don't get into the recycling loop. I challenge you, how many people think about it? You cannot raise hands, unfortunately, at least I cannot see you, but how many people have an end-of-life mobile phone in their drawer? 1, 2, or 3. There will be various, probably, in the attic or wherever they are. So for these smaller devices, they don't easily come into the loop. There's companies like Proximus today that have launched a campaign. Umicore also tunes into that campaign because we can recycle the batteries from the mobile phones and the mobile phones themselves. But so sometimes companies launch campaigns to get these valuable materials from your drawers. So I invite you to have a look and Google it, and you'll find a way to bring your end-of-life mobile phone into the recycling loop. So with that, I think I'm at the end of what I wanted to share today, except for the challenge, the CleanTech challenge. So I hope I gave you a flavor of how Umicore integrates sustainability into our business. So we really consider that as a strategic element. As I said, it's about partnerships in the end. Some of our customers really want to work with us because of the way we do things. And so I'm going to highlight that, not so much anymore with the example of Umicore, but really with the model as well. What are the elements you need to consider? What make you suggestions, make you think, so you can add those things to your business model, because you need to do that from the start. Sustainability is not something that last minute you think about, what flavor could I ask or what add, or what color do I need to add to my business case? No, you need to think upfront. Where do I make the difference? How does that contribute to a better life and to society at large and the needs of the society? And if you have that right, you'll have the right elements that you integrate in the way you do things. And that's what I want to share with you on the 24th of November. So I thank you for your attention, and I hope to interact with you within a month from here.
Okay, thank you, Wouter, for the wonderful presentation about how Umicore incorporates sustainability into its core values. If you want to know more about sustainability, be sure to subscribe for this year's C2C track, as Wouter will give a fully detailed workshop about sustainability. Now I would also like to take this time to thank Kik for allowing us to film in Studio Start. Be sure to check out the website, as they have a lot of up-and-coming events. Next up, we have a little talk show with Arne, the previous winner from CTC 2019. Here you'll get an up-and-close view of what it takes and what it is to be a CTC participant. But first, we'll show you a little afterview of last year, just to give you a taste of the CleanTech Challenge.
So welcome back, everyone. I hope you enjoyed the after movie from last year. Now I have Arne here with me. Arne, as said before, won the CleanTech Challenge last year. And I'm going to ask him some questions that we prepared at CleanTech. But I would like to stretch that we will also be taking questions from the audience. So don't hesitate if you have any question for Arne. I think he'll be happy to answer. So yeah, the first question, who are you? What is your background? Introduce yourself.
So hello everybody, I'm Arne. I'm an industrial engineer from the KU Leuven. And then I did a master in innovation and entrepreneurship at the Vleek Business School. And that's it mainly.
Yeah, so Arne, since we're here to talk about the CleanTech Challenge, how did you get to know about the CleanTech Challenge and why did you join?
I got to know the CleanTech Challenge from a friend. He's called Jens. It was already 2 years ago, because I participated actually 2 times in the CleanTech Challenge. The first time I didn't win it, but I continued and tried again, and then I won it.
Yeah, so last year you won with your startup. Could you tell us something about that startup? What was it about? What was it called?
Yeah, so it was called Pupa Automation. And there we mainly focused on how we could provide sustainable food supply or feed supply for animals. because it's very polluting and has a high carbon footprint. That's why we maybe focused on.
Do you still remember how you came up with that idea to do something like that? Because I don't think anybody would, not everyone will think about something like that as CleanTech.
No, actually we had multiple ideas, but the first one last year weren't that viable. So we persisted and continued to find a good idea. So actually halfway the competition, we completely changed course and continued.
Yeah, so you had the idea halfway through, but how did the CleanTech Challenge track help you with that idea to turn it into a startup? What are the things that made it possible?
Yeah, the workshops were really helpful. Also, the people that are at the workshops are really very kind. The students that are at the workshop too are also not only working on their idea, but if they can help you with your idea, they will also do that. And also the people from the companies, they give really valuable advice and feedback.
So you're talking a lot about people and other students. Are there people, interesting people you met, you still talk to this day, or who helped you later on in your career or research or whatever?
Yeah, I do a lot, some of them. One of them is Jasper from Turbulent. He helped me a lot with pitching. And I recently contacted him for Werfvader. Also, I am still in contact with Aquafin, which was a sponsor of last year. And also with my friends like Thomas.
Yeah. So since the CleanTech Challenge is based on workshops where you learn certain skills, are there some skills, specific skills you learned there?
Yeah, a lot of them actually. One of them is pitching. I wasn't really good at it, so I learned it by practicing. I also made a lot of business plans, which you really learn by doing it. You can read a lot about it, but you have to do it in the end. And financial planning also, the workshops were really helpful for that.
Yeah, so is there one experience from your CleanTech experience that stands out, that you still think about to this day?
Oh, a lot of them actually. A lot of fun moments also. But the really important one was, of course, the finals in London. Again, it's really fun to do it as a team and reach at that point and just enjoy the moment, even if you don't win.
So if you had to choose, what would be the CleanTech Challenge biggest asset?
Good question. I straight away think of many assets. Mainly I think it's a really nice place to start doing something. If you really want to do something, it's a perfect environment to just start and get some guidance, which is also very helpful.
Yeah, very interesting. I don't know if there are already questions from the audience or not yet, and then I'll continue. Is there something you learned through your CleanTech Challenge that you still use to this day? I don't know what you do today, so...
So I'm currently managing director at Werfvader. It's a startup where I have to do the business planning, the financial planning, the pitching. So all those things I learned. Also, I learned a lot of communication skills at the CleanTech Challenge, which I still use today. And the network is also very viable.
Yeah, since you're working at the startup now, Werfvader, and since maybe people will be interested, what is it about? Because I haven't heard about it yet.
Yeah, so Werfvader is a startup that focused about circular economy, mainly about recycling construction water that is normally otherwise wasted. We try to make it a local circular economy.
Yeah, so it's completely in line with the CleanTech Challenge.
Indeed, yeah.
I don't know if there's a question.
At what moment in the track did you come up with your idea?
Oh, I would say probably February, so quite late in the moment. And then it's the only thing you have to do is work and continue.
Work.
Yeah, indeed. It was really a rush in the end, but it's still possible if you want to do it.
Yeah, okay. Final advice for people, why should they join?
Yeah, many reasons, but in the end it's just do it, see what happens. I think it's the perfect environment to start something and to get to know about CleanTech and entrepreneurship. And I think it's just do it.
Okay, then I would like to thank you, Arne, for coming here today.
Thank you too.
And this interesting conversation. And I think we can end here. Next, we'll go to the Q&A with the questions for Bolt There are still questions? Okay, sorry, then we'll wait.
What made you eventually change your ID?
So actually we started with digitalizing e-tickets. It was quite funny because a friend of mine also has a company in that. So in the end we changed it because the market is quite hard to enter. And then we went to sustainable showers. There was a main competitor that just raised a huge investment round. And insects was really something that interested me. And yeah, that was really like, there are a lot of opportunities there still at the moment. And that's why we continued in that way.
Okay. Yeah, another question?
Did you have any previous business experience?
Zero. When I was an engineer, I came in here without any experience, really as a noob. And that's the point of the CleanTech Challenge. You don't need to have a business background, as I had in the last year, because the main people out here have no business background. That's why they are the workshops, so you can learn it, and you can learn at a really fast pace too.
How did you find your team?
Actually, it's quite funny. So Thomas here was a classmate of me, and Jens, the organizer, was also a classmate of me, and we decided let's compete. With also the last organizer of the last year was also in the team, and then Jens, another Jens, not the same Jens, was also in the team. So we're just friends, and we just said, let's do something. We all are interested about entrepreneurship and clean tech, and then we just went for it. I think that's the thing.
Yeah, I'm completely in agreement.
Do people need to have a technical background to participate?
No, not at all. Technical background is a huge thing, but you can't run a company alone on technical skills. There is also such thing as communication, marketing, sales, and those you don't need to have a technical background in. Of course, you need to understand your product, but that's not based on your background.
Yeah, to pick in on that, clean tech is a very wide word. So don't focus on the tech part of it. Yeah. It has also other possibilities.
Indeed, completely agree with
that. Do you need to have a finalized prototype at the Belgian finals?
Like a real working prototype?
It's like a real working startup?
No, what I did had were some computer drawings of the potential models that were working, but in the end we didn't really use them because you can't show a huge model in a PowerPoint, so we just talked about the concept and the concept ID.
Yeah, as he said, it doesn't have to be a working product. Yeah. Some products you can't finish in like four months or something. It can, when the concept is good and you've thought about it, the jury at the finals will recognize it and they'll see it that it's a good concept.
Yeah, and there's also something such as mock-ups, so fake platforms, or not really fake, but like example of your platform.
Yeah, I understand.
Did you struggle to keep up with your courses and participating on the challenge?
No, not really, because it's all about dedication. If you really want something and you just go after it, then you can achieve it. Of course, you can't be drinking on the oude markt every night and then expect to win the competition. You also need to put in some work. But if you are with a good team and you divide the work quite well, it's really, really manageable. That's even very possible to do it.
It doesn't always feel like working since you're working in a team. Yeah. It's like and now you can't go drinking on the oude markt every night, so you have time and enough time.
Yeah.
That were all the questions. So I think we can end here. Thank you, Arne, once again for coming down and this interesting conversation. Then now we'll go to the Q&A where you can ask some questions at Umicore and Bolt, and I'll give the word to Matthijs.
All right. So we're now going to be preparing our Q&A. We have as you have now seen, both Bolt and Umicore here today, both a smaller scale startup who is now in a later stage, as well as, of course, a industry leading larger company. So if you have any sort of clean tech questions according to what might be the ecosystem, what might it be like, or the Belgian sort of system, you can definitely ask them now. Or if you're just a participant, you want to know more about the Clean Tech Challenge, might also just be interesting to get some more background on this in general. So I can see the speakers walking by right now, so I think we can almost go to questions, I assume. I'll wait for the go-ahead. All right. Okay, so I think we'll be switching views right now. No? Okay. Okay, so while we wait for some questions to come in, I already tried writing some down to ask you both. So what are you guys' backgrounds? What did you study? And how did you end up where you are right now? Maybe we'll let Bolt speak first, since...
Yeah, so I actually studied business engineering, and I graduated at 2014 here in Leuven. So yeah, main focus is business engineering, major in logistics. But then again, when you start working, you just build everything up from scratch again. So yeah.
I graduated in Leuven as at that time a bioengineer, and I actually made my PhD at the University of Ghent. And I can tell you that was a refresher, that was an eye-opener. I had a great time in Leuven, but I definitely didn't want to do a Manama in Leuven or anything else academically. But I decided to go to Ghent, and I got stuck in the laboratory there with one master's year in environmental technology, and then got the opportunity to be an assistant at university and do my PhD. And the eye-opener was that the way people teach the courses they are supposed to teach, they can take it from a very different angle. So I did not have any duplication, but just, let's say, another way of looking at things. And so there's not a good or a bad, it's just the realization that people can teach you things in a very different way, very different style, depending on their own priorities and experiences and expertise, of course.
All right, thank you. Yeah, this is also something we notice in the Clean Tech Challenge every year, is there's a very diverse background of students. So you might have business engineering students, or bioengineering, or even computer science. How do you kind of experience that also when working in the clean tech industry? For example, with Bolt, you undoubtedly also have your entire startup team. Are they all also a similar background, or do you just notice a lot of diversity amongst profiles?
Yeah, the question is very easy actually, and a diverse team is needed in a business. I think you'll agree on that. So we're talking about, if you're talking about Bolt, we're talking about 9 people, so we're not bigger than that. So there is a very diverse team there, right? So, I mean, very creative people, marketing people, then sales people, and then of course we have a bit the more techies and operations side, and a bit more commercial. So you do see there are quite some business engineers in our team, but also engineers, a bit from different backgrounds, but also like creative people, which actually people without a degree as well actually started with Bolt. So it's very diverse.
Yeah, it's complementary. If I look at my own team, there's 12 people working in my team, and they go, of course, from chemists, engineers, but I've got a business engineer as well. Actually, a young lady that joined us after having done the Impact Case Day last year, also organized by AFD. So it really depends on also your willingness to open your eyes and get immersed into something. If you need a technical expertise, competence, of course, you need to have it. But if you can widen your scope. I mean, my own experience is also that I've been in several jobs from R&D. I've been 10 years a commercial director, and now I'm heading a sustainability team. And that's both because the company offers you opportunities, but especially also because you create your own opportunities by grabbing the chances you get, but also they don't come on a plate and offer you. Yeah, you have to create them as well, just by showing your willingness and openness to various things.
Yeah, and I want to add, we're talking about degrees, for example, but if I hire people, I don't really look to degrees. I just look to the person. Does it fit with the company culture? Are they motivated? Are they willing to go the extra mile? Do they fit? So yeah, the degrees don't really matter that much, honestly.
I want to add on that, because that's really key. If we recruit people, if I recruit people, the personality comes first. I mean, your training is fine. It's a good entry ticket. Again, if you need a specific technical competence, you need to have it through training. But it's really an entry ticket. The people make the difference. My boss at the time used to say 20 years ago, and it's really the truth. It's the personality of people, the willingness, the openness, the way you work, your attitude, etc., etc. That is really key to make a difference to any contribution you will give in any environment you work.
Thank you for both of your answers. I was really also hoping that you were going to also kind of talk about students and kind of what they would think about later, what actually matters when you're trying to apply to one of these companies as well. So definitely thank you for expanding on that. We've got actually quite a lot of questions in chat. So the first one is specifically to Bolt, and it's, why did Bolt decide to go into the extremely competitive industry of energy production?
Yeah, very good question. Sane people would actually not start there, and the margins are very low. A lot of big companies are there already, big budgets, a lot of marketing budget. So the chances for survival are very low. Still, the idea from Bolt, it came from abroad. So to be honest, we also already saw that it was working abroad. And actually we saw a market fit in Belgium as well, so we just try it. Peter and I are both young and just want to go for it. It's actually the moment. I'm going to my 30s. I'm still in my 20s. This is the moment I have to do it. So I don't have any financial risks. I don't have a house to pay off. I don't have children. So why did we decide on it? Yeah, that's another question. Both Peter and I, we come from the energy sector, and we really saw that the sector is a bit, nowadays how things are going, they're not really ethical, I would say. So we saw there is an opportunity for another player there, and if we do it right, we can, I think, really have an added value in the market. It's just our background, our expertise. So actually, that's the market that we actually chose for. We saw it was an option. We could just go for it.
Okay, thank you. So we've got a lot more questions also to get to. So. For Umicore, as a CleanTech company or a company that really values sustainability, how do you keep up with fast-changing industry or environment changes in terms of CleanTech? Also, you might, for example, think about COVID. How do you adapt sort of your business to this?
I mean, to COVID, you said?
Just in general to the fast-changing industry and environment.
No, innovation. I mean, I think 6, 7, or 8% of our revenues go to R&D, which is significant. With a turnover of multiple billion euros per year, there's a significant amount going to R&D. Innovation is key. I mean, we are in very competitive markets in battery materials. If you know that 95% of the batteries that we use and the devices you all have in your pocket or on laptops come from Asia, and that's also, so it's a very Asian-driven business. But it means as a European company, let's say headquartered in Europe, but we have first of all large manufacturing footprint where our customers are. So that is in Asia, but we also innovate. And that is really key. For the other parts, I mean, whatever happens, if it's a financial or if it's a health issue, as we experience these days, just like any company, you need to adapt. And we've done it at a very rapid pace. Very, very much important is the leadership. I can tell you if the CEO shares a certain way of this is the way we're going to do things, then it's been done. And everybody appreciates the clarity. And in some ways, that's really shaping. So it's about leadership. When I told about sustainability, and the way we introduced it in changing our business model, it is leadership. It's the CEO at the time, Karl Vink first, and then Thomas Leijzen, who decided we're going to change our business model here, and we're going to integrate sustainability from the start. And if that comes top down, there's a lot of bottom up that needs to happen by the people on the floor. People make the difference, but it is really, it needs some steering and definitely the leadership. And it's person by person that make the change by showing the ability to adapt to any situation.
Okay, thank you. So the Bolt, when you started out with Bolt in its early stages, how did you combine it with, for example, another job or anything else you were doing at the time? Was this very challenging, or did you just choose to go for it full time?
Yeah, so I actually went for it full time, and so the story is as follows. So Pieter Jan actually started thinking about this concept, already made some market fits, market study, and he called up, we worked together before, he called me up, pitching his idea. He said, yeah, what do you think about it? At the end of the call, he asked me, like, what do you think, you want to join? Can we do this? And a week later I said, yeah, let's do it, and I quit my job and I started full time. So yeah, so like I said, I was young, I could do it, so that's how it went. Yeah.
So also, what were these kind of early stages like? So you just quit your job, it must be very stressful to go on from there.
Yeah, luckily we had an early investor, so I still had some income. Yeah, in the beginning, of course, a bit looking. I was a consultant, so I had to give in my car and this kind of stuff. I was all of a sudden there without a car, and so, but then it's really structuring your thoughts and really getting to the phase of like, what do I need to do to get this business running, and what are the steps? How do I start building my back end? How do I get the first sales in? What about the financial plan and this kind of stuff? And it's a tsunami coming over you, but you just have to structure it and take point by point, and that's how we did it. Yeah, if you really believe in the idea and you're excited that and you believe that it will work, it's in the end it seems easy. Yeah.
Okay, all right. So for Umicore, could you also elaborate a bit on how you convince companies to go green, even when at times it might be more expensive?
Convince companies to go green while it may be more expensive. Well, if not going green may be more expensive in the end, that's of course an easy answer. But for many things is true. It's I'll just give you the example of what Europe is doing today with the Green Deal, which is again a big flag that covers many things. And we're only at the start of the details, I would say, in terms of the roadmap and the action plan. But the reasoning behind this is definitely if we don't address climate change on the tip of everyone's lips and mind, the consequences will be much bigger in the end. The unfortunate thing is we don't feel it. You can feel it on a hot day or on a very rainy and wet day, but basically it's a very chronic, long-term thinking you need. And for companies, the same. I think in terms of energy purchase as well, I mean, that's key for us to decarbonize. I told you about CO2 reduction. We are an energy-intensive industry. We use a lot of energy in all kinds of ways. I mean, gas, fuels, even cokes for reduction processes. And we source electricity. We need to decarbonize. But there's a premium that comes to sourcing renewable electricity. But there's a whole dynamics in the market. I mean, the picture today is not what it's going to be within 5 or 10 years or longer down the road. So we don't have the crystal ball either for all these things. But the belief is that doing the things right, for instance, in terms of decarbonization, but it can also be in terms of recycling and provide recycled content to customers, in the end is going to be more beneficial, I would say. Again, not always more profitable in terms of the Europes, but certainly more beneficial for the society. And I think companies, and I speak of course as a larger company, but companies that bring value to society, those are the ones that are sustainable, let's say. and that are going to survive. And you need to innovate, yes, but you need to do the right things, because simply, on purpose, I had that slide with the 5 stakeholders you have. It's employees, it's customers, it's authorities, it's NGOs, it's the Greenpeaces and Amnesty Internationals of this world. If you don't do the things right, there's no future for you. And that will not happen tomorrow or next week or next year. But if you have no future, it will be within 5 or 10 years down the road. You will look back and you will realize, I've not done the right thing. So it is not really only about euros, far from it. It's really about how do we want to do things, and what's the evolution in society, I would say, also. And so, yes, it comes at a certain cost very often, immediate effect, but it's to the benefit of a company longer term and to your contribution to society, for sure.
Okay, thank you. Let's maybe bring it back a bit to some of the earlier stages as well. Kind of a fun question. If you were to participate as a student in your student times in something like the CleanTech Challenge, what kind of problems that exist today would get you excited to kind of mess around with in something like the CleanTech Challenge? You can, yeah.
I guess you have inspiration.
Yeah, there are plenty. Yeah, I'm of course going to talk about energy, of course. I mean, like I said in my last slide, I think already the smart meters are being rolled out nowadays. What can you do with all that data? I mean, nowadays we're still so people, professionals in the energy sector are still figuring out what to do with it. There are a lot of ideas, there are a lot of concepts, but nobody knows yet what's going to be the catchy thing, what's going to be bringing extra added value, this kind of stuff. So there is definitely some potential there to work with. Start with looking abroad. I mean, Belgium, sadly enough, is lagging behind again. That's what we did as well. So that's an easy one, and to bring something which already works abroad and to Belgium, and that's actually what we did. So those are interesting things, but also nowadays renewables. Of course, this is very niche, and you need to have quite some knowledge about that. There are quite some options as well, but like really business models like Bolt energy sharing. Bolt is just the start, right? So we're now talking about B2C sharing, so really consumers, you and me, can buy electricity with producers, but you can bring that to B2B. A lot of companies are now starting this kind of stuff. So obviously I would look and go into the energy sector, but there are so many other sectors which I don't have the knowledge of that much, like what is there. First of all, you start with the market study. So are there already competitors? What do they do? Can you copy something and do it better? Also, yeah, like if I would just start pitching about the energy sector, I could go on for hours, I think, of things that I would like to do, actually.
Yeah, I just adding on that, I think I would definitely choose something in the themes of closing the loop, bringing materials back into keep them at the highest state, I would say, of functionality, and bring them back. And I'll give you some examples. Sometimes we think things change rapidly, but actually they don't. Only the day before yesterday, I saw a documentary, a brand new one, on a brave blue world, which is about water. Now I happen to have made my PhD on wastewater treatment, and one of the topics I worked on was biological wastewater treatment and recuperating phosphorus and removing nitrogen, etc. Well, actually in the documentary, one of the examples that was given of kind of CleanTech brand new was recuperation of phosphorus from water. But what's new about it? The scale at which they do it. But I can tell you, 30 years ago, the publications were there, the lab experience was there, magnesium ammonium phosphate, nothing new about it. The thing is, it takes time before you find the way you can do this. Let's say that you have a business model that makes it profitable, because let's also be clear, no business is going to survive if it's not profitable. So we are in companies, you need to make some money, not just for the sake of making money, but also to invest it. I talk about innovation. Where do you think the money comes from for innovation? Yes, there's some subsidies from grants from authorities, but it basically comes from your own funds that you reinvest, and you need to be profitable. But what I want to say in terms of clean tech, I mean, there's plenty around you, but don't think that it's only, the things that no one has ever thought before. It is very often grabbing things which are there in front of your eyes, but that no one succeeded actually to make a business out of it. And so there's plenty of things you can imagine there, or you can just look around and you find examples enough of things that need smart people and very dedicated people, flexible people to shape something and to scale it up and to make it happen.
Yeah, that kind of reminds me of something. Before we started the entire event today, you also, Bolt, mentioned that in Flanders, there doesn't seem to be as much investment or interest in clean technology topics. Why do you think this might be, despite all these challenges that are still right in front of us that we only have to grab? Do you have any sort of idea for it? Or is it just...
I would not say in Flanders there's no interest in clean tech. Yeah, the thing is, well, in my presentation I was talking indeed about green certificates and green contracts, which are, let's say, not really locally produced and local green, but that's just perception, right? So people, if they would know it, they would probably willingly change. So it's very hard to answer that question. It's not really my core expertise neither, I would say. Why? The thing is, if you talk about energy again, the price thing is still there, right? You can actually pitch very green stuff and sustainable stuff, especially if you go to about energy. This is a big budget. Here we're talking about B2C, right? So B2B is another aspect. But B2C, if it's energy is a big chunk of your expenses, if you impact that and you say it's green, but it's going to be a bit more expensive, you will lose a lot of people still. It's just like that. You have to be realistic in the things that you offer. It's always green and price. If you're talking about the B2C, and that's a bit more my core business, but there you really see the sensitivity of a B2C client. And you will also see it by age. So the different target groups, they have a different price sensitivity when it comes to green value propositions. Difficult topic, to be honest, yeah.
But in terms of funds, was your question about funds available for green tech? And because I think that there are funds. I mean, for small to larger companies. I'm not a specialist on that either, but I do know. I've worked for a few years also in a research institute. I know how. I don't think so much changed in terms of the way governments, also the Flemish government funds. Of course, as a company, we look globally. So there's various ways in the regions we work. That includes Europe, that includes Belgium and Flanders, and there is plenty of opportunities. Of course, there's a limit to funds available, but there's so many ways in which you can get at least some seed money, from seed money to really research-orientated funds, and I'm sure there's a broad coverage of funds, especially for green tech applications.
Kind of expanding on that, do you also find a lot of competition in what you're doing right now?
Yeah, and we need that. Yeah. It would be sad if we were the only one, and a bit boring as well. And talking about innovation, innovation can come from yourself, but it can also be because you're pushed to innovate. If someone's been smarter in developing a more efficient material, give you the example of battery materials. I can tell you that the materials which make the car drive today are not going to be the same materials in 5 or 10 years. It takes long qualification with automotive, but what is needed is energy density. It is the amount of energy per kilogram of battery that you can carry. And so the higher it is, the smaller your battery and the longer your distance, your range comes. There's plenty of innovation there, high pressure. So definitely, and competition is needed there, and it's true for any field I think you're working in.
Okay,
competition is good. It's nothing bad about it.
All right. Then maybe a final question to you both, also a bit. What do you think some of the challenges in the future will be for the industry as a whole, or what you're specifically doing? For example, with Bolt. and then also we can touch on Umicore.
Okay, and if we talk about challenges in the energy sector, there will be quite a bit. Yeah, there are a lot of opinions on that. For example, the nuclear stop, and that's a base load that would fall away. The thing is, if you go full green now, it's not that stable, and those are really challenges. How is Belgium, how is Europe tackling this, and how could Bolt as well as a company be helping that and transitioning that? So we're also still a bit figuring out what's going to happen. And you mentioned before, we don't know what's going to be in 5 years. Really, it's changing so fast. So that's the challenge as well. I mean, make sure your company is so agile to go with it. We're small, we will be able to do it. But imagine if you grow bigger, it starts to be harder to shift, right? So yeah, definitely keeping up and making sure that you're in front of that change and pushing that. So that's the challenge, being as a company, keeping ahead of the rest and making sure you're part of that change and you push the change and you are the competition that they have to make sure to align to. That's the way.
I'll bring it back to sustainability challenges for the foreseeable future, and there's three for us. The first one is transparency in supply. I talked about sustainable supply. The world expects transparency. Where do your materials come from? Now, there's quite a challenge in terms of bringing that transparency. There's also tools like methods like the blockchain technology that is being experimented with to trace materials from mine to where they end up finally in the product. But so traceability and transparency in the supply chain. The second one is closing the loop. We talked about recycling, easily said, more difficult to do, especially for society to keep the materials in the loop. I gave you the example of the mobile phones. You probably all have some at home. Keep materials in the loop. It's more difficult to put a battery of a car in a trash bin. That won't happen. So there's good systems there to collect, but there's so many valuable materials that can be recycled. And I'll focus on metals, but you can look at the plastics, you can look at any kind of material around us. And the third challenge, so besides transparency and what we do, the closing the loop is carbon. I mean, decarbonization. I'm part of developing the strategy for Umicore on our carbon reduction. I gave some flavor of the direction it takes. We talk about net zero, but that's an immense challenge for people on the site in a manufacturing environment. It is not only about purchasing green electricity, it's an important part. It's much more complex when you have to look into the operations, into the way you manufacture, into changing fuels, into reducing fuels, etc., etc. So that's really a big challenge, and we're going to be busy with that for quite some years.
Okay, thank you. Thank you both so much for your time and answering all the questions that we and the people at home had. I think that we're going to be ending it right now. Also, I would definitely also like to thank Studio Start, all our sponsors, McKinsey, Vlerik, Umicore, who will all be organizing workshops also in the future, as well as Bolt coming to speak today. Then I would like to remind everyone, we're going to be sending a simple sort of Google Forms around where you can apply if you're also interested in CleanTech, if anything here kind of caught your fancy. Don't be afraid to apply, even if you don't have a team or an idea yet. That will all sort itself out. Thank you so much for tuning in today. Thank you for watching, and we really hope to see you next week on our first ideation workshop.